listening to TMI for the week of October 22nd, 2018. Houston to Dave, over.
Okay, I'm totally going to capture that and have it as a sound.
Houston to Dave, over.
Okay, keep it up. So,
Houston to Dave,
what's...
over. I have an incoming at 2 o'clock. Can't identify, over.
Okay, starburst to ground. Please identify that sound that you're making.
I don't know. I think it's background noise. The specimen is approaching me at 3 o'clock, moving in fast.
Yeah, no, the sound. You spelled it?
Oh, Quindar tone.
Spelt.
Quindar.
I'm waiting for it.
Pardon?
Play it. There you go. Jesus. Okay.
Do you want to start that from the top again?
No.
No, okay.
You know there's editing, right?
It's the 21st century. I was wondering when that was going to happen.
Okay, so stand by with that sound whenever you feel like it. But,
yep.
And the wolf. So, something I want to mention. The next time anyone's watching CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whatever you watch, and there's a panel, it's usually on one side is the host, and on the other side are three panelists, and they're always arranged in order of lakiness. Every time. And they'll never put the second hotter chick closer to the camera. It's always hottest chick, hot like chick, medium age male, and then old male, the furthest away from the camera.
Like
and nobody notices it. Nobody talks about it. And it's not just now and then. It's 100 out of 100 times. No?
100,000 people just in Ontario tried or ordered off of the government websites here in Ontario when it wasn't crashing. I think, what else was there? I think they were saying in BC on their thing that 9,980 orders were placed, 9,175 of which were online sales. 800 sales were made at the only government-run store on day one in Kamloops. The lowest price you can buy weed in BC is for a pre-rolled joint, and that's for $4.20. If you go at a baseline, the minimum price, it would have been $41,000 in sales just on the first day in British Columbia. Alberta, from the Alberta Gaming, Liquor and Cannabis Corporation, said they made $730,000 in sales as of 3:30 p.m. on Wednesday, and they had recorded 8,300 sales. Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority said it doesn't track cannabis sales. Quebec says that they had 42,000 cannabis orders processed on the first day of legalization, with 12,500 in-store transactions and 30,000 online orders. And Quebec said that their minimum price would be at $5.25 a gram, taxes included. So there you go. New Brunswick.
Okay, but isn't there a postal strike?
They said that they've called for one for Monday.
Interesting time.
So, yeah. Well, apparently there's going to be a number of places. I was talking to someone on Friday, and I can't say which organization it is, but it's government. And they voted. Well, they don't want to go on strike themselves, but they've voted to go on strike as well. So, and that's going to be coming up in the next couple of weeks. So, it seems like there's going to be some labor unrest happening in the next little while. So, I don't know.
And is that related to legalization or not?
No, that's cultist contract.
All right.
So it is interesting, though. It's going to be interesting. I'm not.
Well, as much as I don't really want to talk too much about it, I mean, it's hard not to, because it's a single example of important social change in primary legislation. I don't know since when. It's incredible, the implications of it, and Canada being number 2 after Uruguay.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting comparing it to the United States, where the federal government is against it and the states seem to have the right to be for it. And in our case, it's the federal government who's been the leader. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's not like something he snuck in. This was part of his platform, Justin Trudeau. Mm-hmm. And, okay, and you've just listed some of the economic impact of day one, and, I just saw a tweet that suggested that Andrew Scheer's platform was going to include recriminalization. So maybe we could fact check that, but that's exactly what I expect from conservatives. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, I don't think the fight is over. And I'm saying that after 80 years and 60 million jail, 2 entire lifetimes passed, if you're counting on the pro-marijuana lobby, you might be betting on losing horse if you're expecting justice or sanity or anything to prevail moving forward. So let's move on.
So, it's saying here, Conservative leader Andrew Scheer isn't promising to keep cannabis legal if his party wins the 2019 election. Instead, he said they'll scrutinize the rollout of legal pot and go from there. Quote, the Conservative Party will do our due diligence, examine the consequences of this decision, and will examine the reality on the ground, he told Don Martin on CTV Power Play on Thursday. So,
why would you be surprised at that? That's conservative thinking.
Yeah, they're playing to their base.
It's statutory morality, and it's a faith-based hierarchical structure wherein edicts are dropped on by high, and followers are the minions of the leaders. It's conservative thinking. It's always one layer of logic deep and no further.
Well, it's interesting because, he's a bit of a hypocrite, because the conservative leader, the conservative leader was among those who voted against legalization, despite having admitted to smoking cannabis when he was young. He made the admission in an interview with Radio Canada's Toute la Mode en Plural. So it's kind of interesting that...
And that's Scheer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on.
Yep.
Wolf?
Okay, Wolf. So... there's something interesting I noticed being back online. I went to Google Earth a few days ago, and I just wanted to see what was going on in Yemen. And if you go to to Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, and you go to their international airport, you can see clearly on Google Earth the damage that's been inflicted by Saudi Arabia and its partners in that war that's going on there. And I highly recommend it. So the same thing with Syria. If you go up to Aleppo and Idlib and Raqqa, for people who want to really see what the hell's going on.
Okay, look. The clips. Okay.
Clips.
There's 20... I thought it was going to be a shitty week for clips, but there's 27-ish clips.
We have 27 clips this week.
Well, I'm sorry.
It's not a slow news week, is it?
I'm sorry.
Anyway,
it's not what I want. I want 8.
It's
8
a stew.
proper ones.
It's a hearty stew. It is fall. We had snow on Wednesday 3 times.
Time to make stew. Do you ever make stew?
Yeah, I have a slow cooker.
So easy, right?
Yeah, slow cooker. You just cut everything up the night before, throw it in, and just there you go.
And there's 2 approaches to the stew, where one is it's a big pot. I guess you need a lot of people to feed. But you put the potatoes in like an hour before it's done. It's simmering. so that when you take the lid off, the potatoes are there, and they're all soaked up, the evil, you know.
Wow.
Because, you know, you can go, okay, you put the potatoes in the stew, but God's honest truth is by the time it's done all its simmering, they can get a little, which is okay, it thickens it.
Soft.
It's fine, but there's another thing where if you put them on 1 hour before you're going to serve, those potatoes have
I will
boiled.
try it once, and I will let you know on our show in the next few weeks how that turns out and whether I like it.
We're getting close to... I did a spaghetti alla carbonara the other day, so you know it's getting colder out.
Oh, you're... Okay, man. This is like, I know I'm breaking the thing here, but your spaghetti carbonara is 10 out of 10, folks.
It has improved.
This man's spaghetti...
Because...
It's improved. How do you improve on something that's already perfect?
Because we're strict about the Parmigiano Reggiano.
Okay.
And we now... there's a little trick where you pour in some boiling water just after you add the egg and cheese in the frying pasta in the bacon. But the bacon. So now we only use Italian pancetta.
Okay.
There's no normal bacon in it, which takes it now to another level.
Yeah. I'm drooling.
Well,
I wish you could virtually send me some over right now, man.
You could post the recipe in the show notes, or you could ask for them by email, archer@twxnet.com.
There we go.
But,
you won't regret it, folks. I mean, this is... I have gone to supposedly reputable Italian restaurants, and I have ordered it when it's been on the menu, and it has never been the same caliber as
Okay. I'll tell you what. Next week we'll have a segment at the end of the show, and I'll just run through the procedures.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to it. Okay.
Trump was asked about what we've learned about the Khashoggi killing.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw that scene. I just don't know. I'm going to have to see what they say. I heard that report, but nobody knows if it's an official report. So far, it's just the rumor of a report coming out.
So, rumors. So, this goes chronologically because we find things out later in the week.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He's rude to the media.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He says,
You treated me much differently on the subject.
I disagree, but I don't want to have that fight with you.
Hey,
all
it's
right,
okay.
Another fight with you.
Leslie, it's okay. In the meantime, I'm president and you're not.
so that's kind of rude.
Yeah. That is rude. I mean, that's just absolutely... It's not... I've really never heard of a head of state, or at least American head of state. Didn't matter whether it was Bush Senior or Junior. I mean, or Clinton or...
Okay, and so then when pressed on what he's going to do about this Saudi Arabia...
Mm-hmm.
That you will not shut down the Mueller investigation.
Well, I don't pledge anything, but I will tell you, I have no intention of doing that. I think it's a very unfair investigation because there was no collusion of any kind.
But you won't
There is
pledge?
no collusion. I don't want to pledge. Why should I pledge to you? If I pledge, I'll pledge. I don't have to pledge to you, but I have no intention of doing it.
Later he's asked...
Did he deny it?
They deny it. They deny it every way you can imagine.
Would you consider imposing sanctions as a bipartisan group of senators have proposed?
Well, it depends on what the sanction is. Tell you what I don't want to do. Boeing, Lockheed, Raytheon, all these I don't want to hurt jobs. I don't want to lose an order like that.
So... moral authority for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's asked about his love for dictators.
Yeah, well...
He presides over a cruel kingdom of repression, gulags, starvation, reports that he had his half-brother assassinated, slave labor, public executions. This is a guy you love.
I know all these things. I mean, I'm not a baby. I know all these
but
things.
why do you love that guy?
Look. I get along with him, okay?
But you said you love him.
Okay, that's just a
like
figure of speech.
No, it's like an embrace.
Well, let it be an embrace. Let it be whatever it is to get the job done.
He's a bad guy. Do you agree that Vladimir Putin is involved in assassinations, in poisonings?
Probably he is, yeah, probably. I mean, I don't...
Probably?
Probably, but I rely on them. It's not in our country.
Okay.
Like, this is the president.
Keep it. Oh yeah, no. All these quotes are just golden. I mean, 250 years from now, what are they going to say?
Deniers.
Manafort has totally denied it. He denied it.
Let me just tell you, Roy Moore denies it. That's all I can say. He denies it. And by the way, he totally denies it.
I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
And so were the Saudis.
And so they were.
We still can't figure out what he talked to Putin about.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about meddling. I said, no more meddling. If you did meddle, I said, no more meddling, to which he says, I didn't meddle, I didn't meddle. In terms of meddling, Obama was told in September, just prior to the election, that Russia was trying to meddle in the election.
Right.
He didn't do anything about it. He didn't even say anything about it. He only brings it up after the election. That should be your investigation.
Switching to this new international policy of extrajudicial killings.
Oh, well, yes. Okay. Wolf.
They buy apartments from me, they spend 40 million, 50 million. Am I supposed to dislike them? I like them very much. I love the Saudis. Many are in this building. Saudi Arabia, I like the Saudis. They're very nice. I make a lot of money with them. They buy all sorts of my stuff. All kinds of toys from Trump. They pay me millions and hundreds of millions.
You can't make this stuff up. Okay.
You can. But if I was the IRS, I'd be like, oh, really? Oh, okay. You're admitting all this stuff, are you? Oh, okay. Hundreds of millions. Saudis. Okay, thank you, Mr. Trump. We'll be on that. Bragging sometimes, if you brag too much, it's going to catch you.
Later last week, Senator Blumenthal.
Okay.
He has deep, lucrative, long-standing financial ties to the Saudis. He has sold them apartments and condos. He rents them to them. And hotel bookings have literally saved Trump properties. And they continue to make these payments to him in violation of the chief anti-corruption provision of the United States Constitution, known as the Amiens Clause. We've just surmounted a major legal hurdle in the last couple of weeks when the court ruled in the District of Columbia that we have standing 200 members of Congress. And in this lawsuit, Blumenthal versus Trump, we seek basically facts, and that letter also asks for facts relating to these financial ties.
More?
Very reminiscent of the meeting with Russian agents in the Trump Towers. Donald Trump Jr. met with a representative of Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and he was offered aid by the Saudis, and later the vendor that the Saudis said they would provide was paid $2 million by the Saudis. So there are really striking parallels here.
So the week goes on, and meanwhile we're all hearing about video and audio. Last week we were wondering, okay, so we can see the audio came from a recording made by an Apple Watch and his girlfriend waiting outside, and my speculation was, well, what about the video? Does that mean all of these embassies have video? Well, it's sort of turning out as the week goes on that, yeah, the rest of the world is hearing that there's actually video, and there could be video and audio in addition to what was on his. But Trump is still 5 or 6 steps back. CIA Director Mike Pompeo is sent to Saudi Arabia.
On a fact-finding mission.
We've asked for it, if it exists.
Are you surprised that they haven't turned it over?
No, I'm not sure yet that it exists. Probably does, possibly does. I'll have a full report on that from Mike when he comes back.
Full report from Mike.
So, yeah, what does that mean?
A complete, thorough investigation of all of the facts surrounding Mr. Khashoggi and that they will do so in a timely fashion. I told President Trump this morning that we ought to give them a few more days to complete that.
Why should Saudi Arabia be trusted to conduct a fair and impartial investigation when they're accused of the disappearance and apparent murder of Jamal Khashoggi?
So we're all going to get to see the work product. We're all going to get to see the response that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia takes with this, whether it's truly accurate, fair, transparent in the very way that they made a personal commitment to me, and the Crown Prince also made a personal commitment to the President when he spoke to him.
So we're waiting for a report. We're going to hear more of that in a minute. But don't give up yet. CIA Director Brennan.
Mm-hmm.
What were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think they're waiting for the public relations firm to come up with the perfect spin, like, he was beat up during interrogation, and he died.
Yeah, I think the PR firm is owned by Trump.
Yeah, well, I think, the big, I thought of this morning, and, the mistake in that argument is, okay, well, why did they bring a pathologist with a bone saw?
Well, it sounds like some of the details that are being provided to the press, that someone has this intelligence that's finding its way out. The fact that this consulate is in Turkey, I think, indicates that the Turks might have been able to acquire some information, some intelligence about what transpired at the consulate when Khashoggi was there. They would be able to acquire this information somehow. Whether or not the Turks themselves are doing it, other people are doing it, I don't know. And I don't want to speculate, but clearly something's coming out of that consulate.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that Apple Watch that you referred to last podcast.
This is leading to the video.
Yeah.
And if Khashoggi disappeared from a hotel in Turkey or a private residence or something off the street, then I think there'd be questions about what happened, who were these people. But in the consulate with these two airplanes that came from Saudi Arabia, royal airplanes that landed, and individuals who entered Turkey on diplomatic passports and that were, in fact, associated with Mohammed bin Salman, it doesn't seem like they tried to cover their tracks. And that's what's just so confounding about this whole thing.
Confounding is the word of the day with regards to this. It's so sloppy. I mean, what were they thinking?
On Friday, we finally got that statement that we just heard was going to be released. CIA Director, CIA Chief Mike Pompeo, his report didn't say jack shit.
Mm-hmm.
So on Friday night, Lawrence O'Donnell reads the statement from the Saudi Arabians.
Okay.
Statement says the results of the preliminary investigations revealed that the discussions that took place with the citizen Jamal Khashoggi during his presence in the consulate of the kingdom in Istanbul by the suspects did not go as required and escalated negatively, which led to a fight between them and the citizen Jamal Khashoggi, which aggregated the situation and led to his death. May God rest his soul. In addition to their attempt to conceal what happened and to cover it up. While the investigations are still ongoing in the case with the 18 detainees of Saudi nationality, the kingdom expresses its deep regret at the painful outcome and stresses the commitment of the authorities in the kingdom to bring the facts to the public, as well as holding all those involved and bringing them to justice by referring them to the competent courts in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Well, it sounds like a public relations firm, first of all. Second, out of the 18 individuals that have been arrested, was there not one adult among them, one professional among them, that would have made sure that the Mr. Khashoggi got out of there alive?
In Arizona on Friday night,
Saudi Arabia has been a great ally, but what happened is unacceptable. We are going to see they've arrested, just for the people at the table, a large number of people having to do with the event that took place in Turkey and the consulate, the Saudi consulate. And it's a big first step. It's only a first step, but it's a big first step.
Do you consider it credible, their explanation?
I do. I mean, it's early. We haven't finished our review or investigation, but it's I think it's a very important first step, and it happened sooner than people thought it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And more from Arizona.
On defense, we have $110 billion, and I would say almost 100% of it would be sitting right around this table. I don't want to look over and tell Marilyn or Dennis, by the way, we're going to take $25 billion worth of sales away from you, because that would mean a lot of jobs. It would mean a lot of everything. I'll be working on this with Congress. Congress is very interested in this one, and we'll be working with Congress. But I would prefer that we don't use as retribution canceling $110 billion worth of work.
He said that before a Trump rally while having a meeting with the major U.S. defense contractors. So he was bringing U.S. defense contractors up to date on the Saudi Arabian scandal.
Well, you know, that's the expression fall guy. You know, I just heard 18 people falling from the 10th story window of the police station.
Now, turning back to Trump.
Oh, must we?
Just a reminder that while all this is going on, Mueller's investigation has not fizzled away and disappeared. No. And a reminder that it was on the day the Obama administration warned of Russian collusion affecting the 2016 election, that same day, Trump, it was revealed, said,
when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the I can do anything.
So here's a little clip from Rachel Maddow's show that I thought was a real eye-opener.
Okay.
So one of the people who was involved in the dossier that implicated the Trump administration in collusion with the Russians.
Okay.
The lawyer for that Simpson guy.
Okay.
Was stopped in the hallway. So here's Rachel Maddow.
This is Fox's lead reporter on all of the Fox News stories. They've been pushing for months now about how terrible the FBI is and how the real scandal is the dossier and how Christopher Steele himself, he's the real Russia scandal. This is the Fox News reporter who's been pushing all of that. Watch how this goes.
There's a difference between saying that the Russians interfered in the election and the validity of the dossier. I asked Mr. Simpson on the way in if anything in the dossier had been substantiated. Can you address that?
Sure. 4 individuals named in the dossier have either pleaded guilty to criminal charges or have been indicted and convicted of criminal charges. I'll finish my question. I'll finish the answer to your question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The central thesis of the very first memo that Mr. Steele wrote said that the Russians were helping President Trump win the presidency and give him information to win the presidency. The U.S. intelligence community has since found that that was the case.
But wouldn't you agree that there's a difference between the central thesis and the detailed allegations that are laid out in the dossier?
I would, in that the big picture should be the most important point. If you want to quibble with one detail here and there, you're losing the big picture. Catherine, the Russians tried to elect Donald Trump president. It's been proven. And you're quibbling about whether this little detail on page 127 was correct or not? It's absurd. You've got to stop this. The big picture is that a foreign hostile power was trying to interfere in our democracy, in our presidential election.
You know, again, you know, I've said it, it bears worth repeating. I've said it once before, and I'll say it again. I think what's really funny in all of this, as an outsider, is that the Americans, like I guess a lot of countries, have always meddled one way or another in elections, whether they be municipal, you know, state, regional, provincial, you know, or federal. This is nothing new. So, I mean, they've made spy movies about this, you know, for a long time.
Well, to distract us from that, Trump's now on a new tear about interference in elections.
That China has been attempting to interfere in our upcoming 2018 election. They do not want me or us to win because I am the first president ever to challenge China on trade.
And this is a day or two after there's another woman charged on continuing the election interference. And this one had a budget of $35 million and has been now indicted. So, it's pretty obvious pattern. We're talking about Russia, he throws in a China. Mm-hmm. Just as the Russia, it's not even been slowed down. Mm-hmm. And recharacterizing now, in 3 weeks left to go towards the midterms, what Democrats are.
Obstruct, resist, demolish, destroy, and delay. They destroy people. They want to destroy people. These are really evil people.
Democrats.
Yeah, meanwhile, how many children are still separated from their parents and in prison camps?
Well,
Texas.
That can't be if...
I even had an uncle. If you believe in genes, some do, some don't. My uncle was a great professor. But my uncle was a professor for years. I even talk about my uncle was a professor at MIT. My uncle was one of the top people at MIT. But I'm smarter than him. I'm smarter than anybody. I come from a very smart family. It's a smart family. And, we're smart. I had an uncle who was a great professor for, I believe, 40 years at MIT. And I used to discuss nuclear with him all the time. I understand nuclear. Look up Dr. John Trump at MIT. He was my uncle, many, many years a professor. I used to talk nuclear with him. In fact, every time I say I had an uncle who was a great professor at MIT for 35 years, who did a fantastic job in so many different ways academically. He was an academic genius. And then they say, there's Donald Trump, an intellectual. Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Because he has a natural affinity to science.
Find us on Twitter at @thatarcher, our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Rate the show on iTunes. It changes the way the show is listed.
So Trump is an accessory after the fact in the murder. Well, actually, by Friday he was starting to admit there was a murder, but that's only because the murderer said there was one. Up until then, it was all, he's not even a citizen, what do we care? We've got a lot of defense contracts hanging in the wind. But if you if you drive the getaway car, you're part of the bank robbery. If you're part of the... In fact, even, the Nuremberg trials showed that the public relations minister was as guilty as any of the other participants.
Yeah.
So he's running PR, Trump International PR, for extrajudicial killings abroad. And he's an accessory after the fact.
Well, he's openly admitted, and I don't know if this is against American foreign policy or what anymore. I just don't know what America stands for.
Mm-hmm.
But that the citizens of the United States, when they step outside their border, now have a price on their head. That a big defense contract is worth more.
Wow. We're not as civilized as we think we are. These Trump rallies are an interesting example. Trump is essentially his view of the populace, whether at the Puerto Rico hurricane press conference or at his Trump rallies, he's essentially throwing meat and paper towel to vicious apes. So to wrap up the Khashoggi thing, the statement from the king essentially was that
nothing to see here, folks.
It degenerated into a fist fight unexpectedly. Khashoggi, age 60. And so my question is, did the fist fight break out before or after they cut his fingers off? And defense contracts. I wanted to write in my notes. There's 3 major defense contractors. Let's see if we can. Was it Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and one other? It's just the names keep coming up, and they were definitely at that meeting before the Trump rally in Arizona on Friday.
Well, there's Lockheed Martin,
Boeing.
Not Hughes, Boeing.
There's one more.
Morton thought no. General Dynamics.
Guys. There's a shitload of them. There's not just 3
Yeah. Because I know I just read something just recently that Lockheed Martin just got the contract for shipbuilding.
Yeah. Canadian destroyers.
Which is interesting. Something interesting, just as
I thought
an
they
aside.
made planes. I didn't even know they made boats.
They have their fingers in the pie. I think they even do satellites and rocket boosters and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So they've expanded from the early days, that's for sure. But hey,
from the L-1011.
The L-1011. That was a good plane. I enjoyed that plane. Okay, so for our American viewers, the Mega Million draw climbs to $1.6 billion after no winner was selected.
And think Lotto Max was $60 million. I don't do it, but I actually bought a ticket. So, if I win...
60 million. Oh, 60 million. Oh, I thought you were talking 1.6 billion.
No. I can make do with 60 million. But I will say, if I do win, TMI will become stereo. It's like the Beatles in the 60s.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, our production quality is so perfect the way it is right now. But yes, this is
1.6 billion.
1.6 billion.
So, you hear all these stories about the tragedies that ensue when people win the lottery. But I'm thinking $1.6 billion. That's probably enough. That's a good number.
Yeah, that's a good number.
Like
you
even
can
if
take care of all the people that you want to help,
Yeah.
and still have money left over for yourself.
Yeah. But even if it's a big disaster and you spend it all and all that stuff, there'd still just be residual stuff left over for $1.6 billion.
Yeah, you'd have to be a colossal.
Well, you could still sell those seats, the yacht seats and stuff, for a pretty penny, and still have, even if it got the worst case scenario, like if you had to, like, I don't know.
I think I'd go run and hide, man. I don't know what the hell, $1.6 billion. Jeez. Changing my name, face surgery, plastic surgery.
Really?
Get out of Dodge, man. It'd be like, oh my God.
You'd look like that European guy from the Money Pit.
Yeah.
The ex-boyfriend of Tom Hanks's wife, who's the artist who lives a different lifestyle.
And he ended up being the terrorist in Die Hard.
That's right.
Exactly. You must stroke. I remember when you were teaching me how to work. Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. You snap the brush out of the apprentice's hand, and in slow motion, you gesture. You paint. Don't dawdle. Paint. Slow.
from the California Institute of Technology. Scientists have developed what may be the world's fastest camera. Apparently, it can capture 10 trillion frames per second. Why do you want a camera that catches 10 trillion frames per second? Well, according to them, it's going to make it possible to freeze time. They want to be able to see light in extremely slow motion, and they're saying it's going to offer insight into the interactions between light and matter. Stay tuned, apparently they said. Sometime next year they're going to be able to capture a quadrillion frames per second. So they're just working at little kinks right now.
Okay, I don't mean to get all existential on you, but wasn't one of the principles of quantum mechanics that observation affects that which you are observing?
Mm-hmm.
And that is a definite rabbit hole, because I should be better up on this, but there was this whole duality thing where if you do something to one atom in one place, it happens to the other one instantaneously. So instantaneously that it's even faster than light. But then you get into the particle wave duality, where in one moment it's a wave, next minute it's a particle. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of implications to...
Oh, yeah, I can't even wrap my head around the implications.
I have a feeling that nature is going to trick those scientists, and they will learn nothing. Like, the argument is that this camera is so fast that it can slow something down from the speed of light so we can see it. But I think that nature is more surprising than that. And that nothing will be revealed when you slow. I think we're going to find out that you would have to speed the camera up to infinity before you even started seeing anything. So, and that's like not just physically impossible, it's conceptually impossible. So anyway, but that's just, I'm a bit of a cynic.
Yeah, If you're living in Japan, or you're about to go to Japan this week, the cherry blossoms are blooming 6 months early. Scientists say it might be because of the unusual typhoon season. Or, if anybody else has any suggestions, please let us know.
I've been saying how there were hot days just a few days ago that were like above 27 degrees. So I just wonder if having a later episodes of hot weather would confuse the blooms. Because I mean, as soon as you started saying that story, I was like, isn't that supposed to happen? Because we're in the same hemisphere. It would be happening in the springtime.
But they're influenced more, aren't they also influenced more by the Pacific currents?
Maybe, but they have wintry cold days, so...
So true. Well, Davos in the deserts. I guess when they were talking about Davos in the deserts, they were referring to Switzerland 50 years from now after climate change. But it seems like Davos in the desert, just nobody wants to go. So everybody's dropping out like desert flies at the Casbah. So, well, White House press briefings are an all-time low. So conservatives are suppressing the press, I guess, and it's just like Harper was doing it, Ford was doing it, Putin's been doing it.
Well, that's good news, because I've always waited I waited during the Bush years for the press just to stop covering the press conferences, because they were just giving airtime to silliness.
Well, I mean, Trump has been saying the media is the enemy of the American people. So, he's unifying the people to find a common enemy. So I'm kind of surprised with this whole thing. Let's
be objective.
Saudi.
Let's just assume for 2 minutes everything he says is true and right. That it all is all fake news, and everything he says that's fake is fake, and it's just a conspiracy. And
we'll be the 10th man here. Okay.
That's as far as I can go. It's just so silly. Since he's been in office, the debt's gone up 17%. It's now around $779 billion, expected, and will, by 2020, be $1 trillion. And I think it's up by 113 extra billion since Trump has been in office.
Okay.
Like higher than it would normally be based on the previous year. It's like, I promise not to depreciate non-taxable items brought forth from the previous tax year. 779.
Okay.
That's a lot of that.
So,
and it's because they gave the tax break.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen floating around in the news. Mm-hmm. And I'm mentioning this because this is just probably what's going to happen here, so why the hell not? But, and I never really thought about this, but that Republicans, and I think Bush tried it, but you give away the surplus, $1.3 trillion, and you're just choosing to have that as debt as a result. The trickle down has never worked. What's been proven time after time after time. So every time it's done, we just turn our heads and hold our breath. What they do, the reason why they do this, because that should be your next question. Well, then why the hell do they do it? Bush gave it away a little bit more towards some poor people, whereas this really just mostly did benefit the rich in the United States.
Yeah.
But what it does is it means now they're claiming they have to make cuts to Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid.
Yeah.
So, but that's what this is about.
Uh-huh.
So if you cut taxes so the government can't afford its programs, and then you assume that nobody's going to want to cut military and all this fear-based spending that they do in other areas, and their welfare bailouts of giant corporations and whatever it is they're up to, and their, golden helicopter rides and Air Force Ones and all that stuff. So you're not going to cut that. So if you drop taxes to nothing and the government starts racking up huge deficits, now you can cut social programs.
That's always been the grand design. That's taken from a playbook.
Okay.
Whether it be Thatcher's England, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, whether it be Reaganomics, whether it be, you name it.
Coming up after the awkward pause.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry for the heavy sigh. But yeah, no, I mean, it's happening in Ontario. I mean, look what's happening.
But I just, because if you can't figure out why they do that, they keep going back to this proven triple down economic strategy, and then giving the tax breaks to the rich, and not giving a shit if you piss off the poor people, and you can't figure out why they're doing it. It's because it's the perfect license to cut entitlement programs.
The French Revolution was partially a result of the people being marginalized, as well as the Russian Revolution and all the every revolution, people are marginalized somehow, right? So it's not going to be any different here in Ontario or the United States. I mean, they can keep on going the way they want to go. But
Elena Casavanovia is that woman who was, and it's information warfare is what she's charged with. Information warfare. So Trump is benefiting from Russian information warfare operation, which is why he's not been too worried about closing any opportunities the Russians have in continued interference in U.S. elections.
Okay. So he's, in other words...
She's still doing it. It's now $35 million. She is the accountant who worked for the company where all those other Russians were, I don't know. And the right, isn't it that they don't even have a, I hate this term, cybersecurity czar in the United States. I love that word. It's so George Bush. But yeah, and the implications of the Russian thing.
Oh yeah. It's just so delicious. I mean, it's just it's like Spaceballs, man. It's just like that's like the Trump version of Spaceballs. Hey,
Maybe
Mel
I have
Brooks.
to re-see that.
Mel Brooks, man.
I think I have to re-see that.
Yeah.
It's been enough time that I can't really remember Spaceballs. Isn't John Candy in that?
He most certainly is.
Find us on Twitter @thatarcher. Send us an email, archer@twxnet.com. For guest links and contact info, visit our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Find us on Android and Apple Podcast apps. Subscribe and rate the show on iTunes.
I'm Dave Archer in Toronto.
And I'm Ian Stolberg in Ottawa.